Okay, Ian Trottier here for Discussion of Truth. Going to dial in Joachim Hagopian. He's a West Point graduate and talking about corruption in the military and also, folks, pedophilia. So, Joachim Hagopian. Joachim, can yes, can you hear me? Okay, and another issue here with the sound. Okay, so and it's certainly state by state's a big issue. We've got these kind of complete opposites in regards to what kind of government these aristocrat based families like Newsom in California. I just say that because I know he's tied into Pelosi, and Pelosi sounds like she's tied into something pretty wealthy out of Italy. And then you've got DeSantis, who's a complete opposite side of the spectrum, and defending his people's rights for independence. Joaquin, let's get into. Well, before we do that, I want to get into this 5 book series that you've written. But before we do, let me ask you this question. You talked about transhumanism. You talked about these metallic graphene particles that are in these vaccines. It seems quite apparent that the bloodlines that you mentioned uh, want servitude for the majority of people on the planet. It's now at a time where the people must rise. They must organize, as you're saying, and they must fight back. And we're seeing some of that happen through legislation, but it's not hard enough. Uh, let me ask you this question, Joaquin. And I've had David Icke on the show. It's been a few years, but he has said, and this is a researcher and journalist out of left BBC out of UK. He has said that this is a reptilian type control. Do you see this power elite, if you will, that's running the banking scheme, the pyramid Ponzi scheme, as I call it, globally for this global reset, this global economy? Do you see this being controlled by a non-human entity? I mean, what's happening here, Joaquin? What's going on here? Like I said, David Icke refers to these people as reptilian. Do you see something non-human at play here? Yeah, and it's not, we've got a large percentage of human beings that walk the planet to believe in a supreme being, and that's quite apparent that human being did not invent any part of this universe, and so if there's a God out there, then that God is not living, doesn't seem to be living on the planet, so that God would be extraterrestrial. So it's not a totally ridiculous understanding to conceive, and it's certainly conspiracy theory is meant to squash and suppress people from thinking outside the box, and all that does is conform. You have some comments here. Go ahead, Joaquin. Yeah, and that seems to be what's where this is headed. I want to get back in, Joaquin, to some results, and how Americans can get more active, and what you think lies in the future for the country. But let's visit here the 5 book series that you've worked on. The title is, ladies and gentlemen, is Pedophilia and Empire: Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. Uh, Talk about that a little bit for a moment, Joaquin. What led you to write this series? Joachim, David uh, David Steele wrote the forward. Robert David Steele, the late Robert David Steele, wrote the forward to this series. Uh, who was this individual? He's a former CIA, my understanding. Talk a little bit about who he was and what impression he made on you and your work. You're talking about Robert David Steele. You addressed this of rigged elections. We know Venezuela certainly was a rigged election. I've had a Cuban historian on the program, Servando Gonzalez, born in Cuba, University of Havana, living in the United States, saying, "Ian, the CIA is controlled by a foreign power. They're the ones that were behind Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. This is what is being implemented right now in the United States." We take those issues as far as manipulating voting machines. The Rockefeller Foundation has had their hands in these types of systems to overthrow governments by rigged elections. Was the Donald Trump presidency, in your view, Joaquin, Was that a scripted presidency? Was the election taken therefore from Clinton? How far back have these elections been rigged? Talk a little bit about the Donald Trump presidency and maybe the 2020 election that has given us a guy named Joe Biden now in the Oval Office. Joaquin, very well said. Trump spoke of two kind of catchphrases that no one before him I remember speaking of. That would be the deep state and fake news. Fake news is self-explanatory. That's why people like yourself do what you do. Certainly why I do what I do, primarily. But talk about the deep state. You mentioned Catholicism. We know that the Vatican has an issue with uh, pedophilia. Are there connections to what, let's say, the deep state means? Definitively what that means to the Vatican. How does pedophilia fall in line with that? You can throw out Jeffrey Epstein, but how do you view that, Joaquin, in your research? Well, how do you define the deep state? Joaquin, that's a pretty strong word you used there. As we wind down, and I thank you again for joining the program. As we wind down, let's get some resolution here. What's the best foot forward for listeners to move on? Do you see the country recovering? Do you see liberty? Do you see an independence continuing? What do you see for the future of your country, Joaquin? Joachim Hagopian, the author of Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. He's a West Point grad, ladies and gentlemen, contributor to Global Research and LouRockwell.com. Joaquin, thank you for joining Discussions of Truth. I want to give you a moment here to express some final thoughts, some final words for listeners. Joaquin, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Joachim Hagopian. Joachim, looking forward to staying in contact with you. Thank you very much. That is Joachim Hagopian and empireexposed.blogspot.com and or pedoempire.org. You know, I frequently refer to the necessity and or the unraveling, if you will, of what seemed to be a modern day witchcraft and the need for another Salem witch trial, basically. But you've got a American witch trial. It's a conversation, right? It's a discussion. It's a topic that is not appetizing. People don't want to talk about pedophilia, right? I mean, I certainly don't. I don't even want to conceptually think that it even exists. And that's just, my perhaps naive world, and it's where I live. It's not something I would even consider being involved with any way, shape, or form. Yet, as Joachim has clearly stated, you've got a son. Is it he's the only living son? I think Joe lost one. I'm not sure, but you've got Hunter is his name, being an exposed pedophile. Disgusting. Totally disgusting. But, I think the average American is probably like me, from a place of comfort that just isn't around this type of thing. Not being exposed. But, something like this, adrenochrome, being synthetically manufactured by a company out of the Midwest and being contracted, to my understanding, by the United States Army. It's happening. It's happening. The military is crumbling. American politics are divided. And therefore now the states. The states that make up the Union are becoming ununified, aren't they? We're not there yet.
we're not there yet. And whether there's hope for a resolution that is legal and lawful, only time will tell. Nobody wants any type of disturbance physically. I certainly do not. I would imagine you don't either. But like Joachim is saying, Americans will only be pushed so far. And a mass resolution seems to be forming. More and more people are realizing that the corruption has simply gone too far. And what is most important to understand, from my view, is that the economic strings that tie the country to slavery, this country is in servitude. Economically, the United States federal government has a multi-trillion-dollar debt. That means it is in debt. I said a debt. It is therefore an economic servant. It itself, the country, is in slavery. It's enslaved to what I know to be a European banking organization that roots to Basel, Switzerland. 1945, the Chinese Central Bank is developed as a result of World War II, and as a result of World War I, the Russian bank, Central Bank, was developed. So this is a well-organized, well-sophisticated, well-planned and engineered regime to control the economy globally, otherwise known as a monopoly, which is unconstitutional. It's antitrust, and should not be existing in the United States. So to bring forth resolution legitimately, that depends on you. That depends on you, the listener. You must make a difference. You must make a choice. You must make a stand. You must demand answers from your representatives in Washington, D.C. Because folks, you, me, we have all allowed this. We have all allowed this, and it is no more apparent than ever before that this virus is totally blown out of proportion. It's a relatively safe virus compared to any other flu or cold type coronavirus, and has been manipulated by the media to scare and instill fear, and insert a global economic agenda. That seems very apparent, and I've known of this now for well over a year and a half, and it was stated to me by someone who I had heard named Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine Austin Fitts, a Wharton grad and a former economic advisor under Reagan. But know this, that I have been outspoken against corruption in all levels of life, primarily the government, since 2016. Because of being exposed to the Zika virus, another coronavirus, and the pesticide, which was banned in Europe. And that's where I was led to via an ingredient of the pesticide known as tetraethyl that appears in this pesticide known as Naled. I was led to the research of Anthony Sutton. Something he spoke about, Hegelian dialectic, controlling opposites to dominate the outcome. So yes, America, you're in dire straits. There's no way around it. And if you want to save your country, you listening to my voice right now, you must stand up and demand answers and make a difference. That's where we're at. We have no other choice. Before I leave here, and it was a delight having Joachim join the program. And again, I urge you to please support his work, buy his literature, and go to his website. Again, it's empireexposed.blogspot.com and or pedoempire.org. The 5-book volume series is entitled Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. It contributes to global research. And Lou Rockwell Hagopian.com. He's a West Point graduate, as mentioned. And I want to leave you with this. I simply want to leave you with this. I personally do not think the Chinese are an enemy. I don't think they are. This is a civilization anciently that built a wall to protect itself. This is not a conquering type mindset person. Right? The Chinese have not historically had a navy that sails around the world. The Italians have. The Portuguese have. The Europeans, the English, the Spanish have. The Chinese, they have not. The Asians have not. Again, from my viewpoint, my understanding, the Chinese built a wall to defend themselves from attacks from the Mongolians. So this is not a mindset that has just changed over the past 100 years, in my view. This is a peoples that have been coerced, if you will, into this global regime. And my feeling, the bankers controlling the U.S. government, and if you disagree with me, because you might think that, the United States controls the printing of the dollar. Ridiculous. That's a completely false concept and understanding. The United States Federal Reserve is not a government organization, and it is subservient to, as Joachim just noted, the City of London, to the Bank of England and those shareholders, the Rothschild primarily. The United States Federal Reserve is a private bank, ladies and gentlemen, and so the printing of the dollar has nothing to do with the U.S. federal government. It has everything to do with steeping it further into debt and crashing the dollar, in my view. And they overplayed their hand. I've said that as well. They have overplayed their hand. Americans are catching wind. They're catching on to what is happening. So in regards to China, the only reason you should be concerned about China is the military that U.S. corporations have built up over the decades, like Nike, okay? Whatever it may be, these products that have these American-owned companies that have had their products made in China for profiteering. Again, it's all based off the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is not controlled by the United States. The U.S. dollar is controlled by this European banking cartel. So if you understand that, then it makes complete sense that your Forbes list of Bill Gates and these other people that are worth billions of dollars, compared to the true wealth, and go to Richard Lighthouse, he's got a master's of science from Stanford. You can go to that episode that I did with him probably 3.5 years ago. You can go to his literature, just type his name into a public search engine. You go into the information that he's exposed. The real wealth, folks, is not with people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. And I'm not saying they don't have wealth. I have no wealth, okay? So these people live very comfortable lives, and they own much property. So this is wealth. But their real wealth is people like those that control the Queen of England or the monarchy of England. Okay, that's wealth. So you have to think of things in perspective of centuries. Okay, and the United States has not been around for centuries, apart from a little over 2. Okay, so it's it's a new kid on the block, isn't it? It is now. So Chinese, in my view, are not a concern. I would not be concerned about the Chinese. I would concern myself with the United Nations controlling the Chinese government. Okay? Now, that's what I would concern myself with. I will repeat that. The United Nations controlling the Chinese government. So I will end with this, and I will read this verbatim as it was delivered to my inbox yesterday. The attached document, which I began opening up with in regards to, and I've got a few minutes here, to get about 5 minutes to give this to Igor Panarin, ex-KGB analyst. Over the many years, the United States government has. This is not what he has written. This is pertaining to his research of the United States falling into basically different countries, like Europe, right? That's what happened. The Roman Empire broke up into smaller countries. Likely, that's probably what's going to be happening in the United States. We'll see. It's not the first time it's happened in the United States. It's right, because you had Arizona, California, Texas, their own independent countries for about 2 years. Of course, they had left the Mexican Union. But it's not the first time America, I mean not the United States, it's not the first time America has seen this. Okay, so based off of that information, this is the word. I'm not going to reveal the source from which it came to me, but the writing, the literature that was given to me is as this. And let me check my time here. I've got time, plenty of time. So you'll see how the tactics of China over the past few decades fit into the end game. And that is Igor Panarini, and I'll put this up on my Instagram. Panarin, the Russian former KGB analyst, is talking about, and again, we're talking about the United States as a mass from California to New York being dissolved into regions. Okay. Over the many years, the United States government has accumulated a vast amount of resource-rich land in the name of conservation, meaning land that contains gold, silver, diamonds, lithium, plutonium, rare earth metals, oil, natural gas, timber, etc. Our government has also accumulated a great amount of debt, with no obvious way of paying that debt back. What backs that debt? Our sincere promise as a nation to pay it back? And before I continue reading, think about this. As the debt increases, folks, so does Wall Street. So what sense does that make? Well, that basically means that the companies that the United States are represented by, so the companies, I'll mention it again, like Nike or Ford or Chevrolet or whatever it may be, General Electric, those American companies that are represented on the Wall Street Stock Exchange increase. But wait a second, yet so does the national debt? Okay, so that basically, that should be an alarm to you. And say, oh, well, the controlling entity over the U.S. debt just means that the corporations are buying into their scheme more and more, aren't they? It should be opposite, folks. It should be opposite, but it's not, because you and me and everyone else is too complacent and too comfortable and not asking the hard questions. I happen to do so in D.C. in December at the Trump Plaza Hotel. I think it's called the Plaza Hotel. It's on Constitutional Avenue, I believe it is. Maybe it's not Plaza Hotel. It's a Trump, whatever it is. One of the Trump hotels. It's a Trump hotel on Constitutional Avenue, D.C. I asked Pete Sessions. I believe he's a congressman out of Texas, at least formerly was. I asked him that same thing, and he says, yeah, Ian, there's a lot of us up on the Hill that are concerned about this. It was last year in December. You need to be asking that same question. You need to be writing your representative today. You need to be writing your senator today, your governor, whoever it may be. You're asking these questions. You need to demand the answer to these right now. Check my time again, and I'm good. I've got about 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes. Okay, continuing. No more segues. Some say that since the elimination of the gold standard in 1971, Richard Nixon, oil has become the pseudo-guaranteer of the dollar. Well, that was Bretton Woods, wasn't it? That was post-World War II, so before the Richard Nixon shock of 71. In essence, because the dollar is the world currency and most international transactions, including oil, are priced in dollars, oil exporting nations become income dependent on the dollar's value. And that stands as way at this moment. If it falls, so does their government's income and perhaps their government. Keep this in mind as China seeks superpower status and the trifecta impact the decline of the U.S. dollar will have on cementing China as the world's economic power. Insert what happened right now recently with Biden pulling out of Afghanistan. I long said I see the Chinese now moving in. We'll see if that happens. If you're China and actively working to garner world currency status while stabilizing the U.S. and the dollar, why would you provide any credit to the U.S.? Why would they still be holding U.S. Treasury bonds? Why not cut up America's debit card rather than lend money to a nation that won't be able to buy back? Unless, of course, they already have an agreement in place for which their treasury holdings are guaranteed by something other than a fiat currency. Interesting concept. Guaranteed by something having a potential resource valuation of $100 trillion. Below is a graphic that clearly displays the vast extent of federally owned land. And I'll put this up on my Instagram account. Okay, the large portion of it in the Midwest. Notice, both Alaska and most of western portions of America, I just said that, are entirely dominated by land owned by the federal government. Notice also that most of that land has a high concentration of valuable natural resources. Today, it is clear that China prepared a plan for war decades ago to strategically control the world by capturing and controlling world manufacturing and vast amounts of natural resources. Okay, I don't agree with that. I stated my reason why. If you didn't catch on to it, I can explain. Contact me. Do so by Instagram. Continuing. Especially rare earth metals. There's a reason that China doesn't worry about their efforts to replace the dollar and how it appears to adversely impact them. China continues to hold huge quantities of U.S. treasuries and other dollar-dominated state and local government debt, both on the books and off, in spite of obvious increasing default risk. Congress keeps raising the debt ceiling. The Fed chair says it's a housekeeping chore, end quote, and China doesn't have an interest in cutting up our credit card yet, nor does China complain about the U.S. debt. U.S. department is, debt, no, it's misspelled, is unsustainable. China doesn't fear our collapse. They're betting on it. Our debt is actually guaranteed by I do agree with this, by the resource-rich lands you see above. Every year, Congress raises the debt ceiling, finds new reasons to authorize more spending in the trillions of dollars, where a majority of those dollars in the form of Chinese-sponsored credit pass through and into the hands of the wealthy and the well-connected and large multinational corporations. Meanwhile, America got a check for $1,200 and a notice or study the massive wealth gap that is building as each new $1 trillion spending package is approved. That $1,200 is a stimulus check, right? Oh, stimulus. Oh, here's a global pandemic, and let me pay you for being able to stay at home and keep yourself safe. From something as a 98%. If you took a stimulus check, shame on you. Shame on you if you took a stimulus check. Shame on you. All right, I've got under 2 minutes. Try to wrap this up. Essentially, our ruling class has sold a portion of the U.S. to China for vast amounts of wealth that benefit only the ruling class families, securing their feudalist rule for the next several generations. China will continue to support our debt until they have paid in or expose themselves to $70 trillion in U.S. debt defaults. On that day, the spending will stop. China will then seek to exchange our defaulted debt and a large number of interest rate derivative contracts to take possession of the assets that backed all of that spending, the entire western portion of America in lieu of war. Congress will gladly hand over the land and thank them for their help in rebuilding. Build back America better. Interesting. When Congress hands over the land, expect them to see, or just before, regular Chinese military armored columns and troops, I've said this, or mostly Chinese military, under a UN flag, take full control of California as a first step, while the people probably cheer their arrival. I've got 30 seconds left. China will expand from there, moving north and then eastward to secure all the Rocky Mountains, as seen in the graphic above. And the remaining American and Chinese occupied territory will likely send back to mainland China to live in one of the 13 ghost cities camps China built as part of this plan. I wonder what the environment groups will say when China begins large strip mining operations immediately afterwards. Hint, they won't be around to see it. They were kept far away and tightly controlled back in one of the ghost cities. Folks, if you've gotten the vaccination, maybe that's a good place for you to be in, because you'll likely be passing away, according to Big Tree. And I'm going to continue this, so wrapping. Okay. If you have been vaccinated, this is an interesting look at it, you might be better off, because according to Del Big Tree, you will be dead within 10 years. Yes, Del Big Tree said this a week ago in Miami, a week and a half ago in Miami. He says by his research, he shows that people who have received that vaccination will be dead within 10 years. I didn't say that. I just reiterated it. Okay, it's not based off of my own personal research. So maybe if you have been vaccinated, you might be in a better position, because you won't be left to be defending your country against a Chinese invasion under the guise of the United Nations, according to this information that was given in my inbox and sent to me. And I'm not going to reveal the source, but I can tell you that this person has written for prior presidents and their administrations. Yes, presidential speeches. So the country's crumbling. Make no mistake about it. Stop wearing a mask. Don't get the vaccine. And if you've been vaccinated, don't get the booster. And according to Dr. Stella Emanuel, former guest on my show, you can help yourself during the winter months by hydroxychloroquine. Putting hydroxychloroquine in your system if you have been vaccinated. Okay? And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to mention this one last thing. I was contacted a week ago by a woman out of Dublin, Ireland. happen to contact me on Instagram, Ian Trottier, Trottier. My family's been in North America. They landed at Quebec in 1646. Trottier, like Cartier. Been on this continent for a while. Trottier came from France. Giles Trottier was his name. Brought his family over to help build Quebec. He'd worked on cathedrals, and he was a carpenter in France. Folks, this is what I'm going to leave you with today. The woman compiled an article. It's 15 pages long. Write to me. I'll send it to you. I urge you to write to me. Go to my website and just fill out the contact form. Ian Trottier. INTROTTIER. Contact me on Instagram. I'll send it to you. Give me your email address. I will send you the 15-page article that she wrote. It took her 3 years to write it. It is on QR codes, quantum dot tattoo, and vaccines. This is a digital reset. This COVID vaccine has nothing more to do than digitizing your currency, and you should be completely appalled at that, because your currency in the United States is a fiat currency. It has no value. Nixon abolished the gold standard in 1971. Your dollars are worthless. Oh, yeah, sure, they're worthless because you're buying heat with it. You're paying gas with it. You're buying food. You're buying houses. You're buying boats, planes, whatever you're buying with. Candy bars, popcorn. Of course, it's working for you. But your government's in a $30 trillion debt, which means it's subservient to a greater power, and that roots to Basel, Switzerland, which I say has to do with the Jesuits. Eric John Phelps is my source on that. The Black Pope, White Pope, Gray Pope, know the differences. Your Francis Pope is the first Jesuit Pope in the history of the Vatican. You got major issues going on globally. But you still have a chance to save your country if you're in the United States. If you're in Australia, I wish I could help you. Maybe I don't. I'm trying to save my country as it is. But hold on to your Second Amendment rights. Okay? And that's what I urge you to. Joachim just said it there. Hold on to your Second Amendment rights. That's the only thing that's stopping this global tyrannic regime from taking America over, is the fact that its people are still armed. As long as you're armed, as long as you're armed, you're a force we reckon with. I'm not suggesting that you fire a gun. I never joined the military. I'm not a violent person. I want peace. I hope you want peace too. But I also want freedom. And I support my Constitution. I support what the Constitution has empowers its people with. And that is free speech, which is eroding at an incredible pace, and free media, which we haven't had for years. Okay? But there is still free speech. I'm speaking my mind right now. And there's freedom of religion, which is eroding right now. Okay, and that goes to Eric John Phelps talking about the Jesuits. The Jesuits controlling, through the Knights Templar, the central banking system out of Switzerland. Which, by the way, of course, you may not know. You should know. It has not got involved in any wars for like 150 years. Because it's protected. Oh, put your money here. Be protected. Well, who's controlling that? The little questions that people don't ask is why the country's in a mess. Okay, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I don't even get into the Black Lives Matter. I've got plenty of Asian friends. I've dated more non-white women, and I'm a white man. I've dated more non-white women than I have white women. Okay, the arguments are ridiculous, preposterous, and they're time wasting. All right, and don't turn your TV off. Don't watch the sports. Don't do some real research. And if you're in high school and you're listening to this, I'm not saying don't continue to college and get a college degrees, but I'm saying if your teacher tries to censor you and censor your research, you need to fight back. Okay, you need to fight back and send this recording, send this message to mainstream media. America, you must rise, you must stand, you must act, and continue to act. So, for another discussion of truth, this is Ian Trottier. Thank you for listening. Pass the episode on to a friend. I thank Joachim Hagopian for joining the program, West Point graduate. And I will be at We Can Act this coming weekend. It'll be in Salt Lake City, Utah. WeCanAct.net. I've got a lot of great things coming up. I urge you to share my website, donate to the program. I'm independent, I'm unfiltered, and I will continue speaking my mind and doing this work for you and for the liberty and freedom of this country as long as I draw breath. IanTrottier.com, INTROTTIER.com. Discuss your truth. Until next week, folks, be awesome.